Overnight, everything changed. What started as a harmless-looking system out in the Atlantic suddenly exploded into something far more dangerous. Storm Kristin intensified with shocking speed, catching much of Portugal completely off guard. By the time people woke up, the storm was already there. In places like Leiria, the impact was immediate and brutal. Powerful winds ripped through neighborhoods, relentless rain flooded streets, and the coastline turned violent. This wasn't a slow buildup, it was chaos unfolding all at once. As the storm pushed inland, wind gusts grew stronger by the hour. Rain slammed into cities, reducing visibility to almost nothing, while the Atlantic Ocean transformed into a wall of moving force. Massive waves surged toward the shore, smashing into coastal areas with frightening power. Portugal's weather service issued its highest-level warnings, calling the conditions life-threatening. But for many communities, those alerts came as the damage was already happening. People stepped outside to scenes they barely recognized. Trees were down across roads, cars were stranded in rising water, debris littered entire streets. Travel became dangerous almost instantly, and outdoor structures simply couldn't hold up. Emergency services were pushed to their limits as calls flooded in. For regions not used to storms of this intensity, the speed of escalation was the most dangerous part. In just one night, Storm Kristin went from a forecast to a full-blown national crisis, exposing vulnerabilities, overwhelming local systems, and triggering widespread disruption across the country. And along Portugal's Atlantic coastline, the ocean itself became the greatest threat of all. This storm wasn't just fast, it was unforgiving. As Storm Kristin continued to grow stronger, the ocean became a serious threat. Waves rising as high as 20 to 40 feet charged toward the coast, not as single crashes, but as non-stop, pounding surges. The shoreline took hit after hit. Seawalls, ports, and coastal neighborhoods, designed for calmer conditions, were suddenly facing forces far beyond what they were built to handle. With every wave, seawater pushed farther inland. Low-lying coastal areas began to flood as salt water poured into streets, parking lots, and waterfront facilities. Protective barriers were overwhelmed. Breakwaters disappeared beneath the waves. Docks and piers shook under constant impact, and in some places, the boundary between land and ocean simply vanished. Emergency crews struggled to move. Coastal roads flooded quickly. Access routes were blocked by debris and water, slowing rescue efforts and delaying critical safety inspections. Officials urged residents to stay far away from the shoreline, warning that powerful waves could strike without warning and without mercy. While inland communities were dealing with flooding and storm damage, the Atlantic Ocean made everything worse. Coastal zones became isolated, dangerous, and extremely unstable, adding a high-risk layer to an already dangerous situation. As Storm Kristin pushed farther inland, the threat shifted again. This time, it was the wind. Across Leiria and nearby areas, powerful gusts tore through city streets, growing stronger by the minute. Large trees were ripped out of the ground. Heavy branches snapped like matchsticks. Trees crashed onto roads, crushed parked cars, and slammed into homes and businesses. Entire neighborhoods turned into hazard zones. Structures exposed to the wind began to fail, and damage spread fast. The storm wasn't slowing down, it was tightening its grip. Outdoor dining spaces, storefront signs, fences, and scaffolding were torn loose and thrown across the streets like toys. The wind funneled through narrow city blocks, growing stronger at street level, ripping away roof panels and tearing exterior fixtures right off buildings. In multiple neighborhoods, fallen trees and scattered debris blocked entire roads, cutting residents off and slowing emergency crews. What felt manageable at first turned into total disruption in just a few hours. Roads that normally carried steady traffic became completely impassable, buried under twisted branches, broken panels, and upturned objects. When daylight arrived, it revealed block after block of destruction. Debris spread as far as the eye could see. In Leiria, the wind wasn't a side effect of the storm, It was the storm. It reshaped the city overnight, turning everyday structures into dangerous obstacles and pushing the emergency across central Portugal into a far more serious phase. As Storm Kristin's effects stacked up, movement across Leiria and much of central Portugal began to fall apart. Major roads were shut down as trees collapsed, floodwater spread, and wind-blown debris cut off access in every direction. Vehicles were left trapped, with no clear detours and no safe way through. The disruption didn't stop on the roads. Train service was partially suspended after conditions along rail lines became too dangerous. Debris near the tracks, rising water, and poor visibility forced officials to halt service on key routes, cutting off commuter and regional connections right when they were needed most. Daily life was impacted almost immediately. Schools closed, public buildings reduced hours or shut down completely. Residents were urged to stay home and avoid travel unless it was absolutely necessary. Trips that once took minutes turned into long delays or couldn't happen at all. With both road and rail networks failing, Leiria's connection to surrounding communities deteriorated rapidly, and the storm was still unfolding. Emergency crews were slowed at every turn, and residents struggled to reach work, medical care, and even basic supplies. In just a few hours, the city shifted from normal daily life to near isolation, a powerful reminder of how quickly extreme weather can shut down modern transportation. As Storm Kristin continued to strengthen, the situation turned deadly. Authorities confirmed multiple fatalities and injuries across Portugal, many caused by falling trees and structural collapses driven by violent winds and heavy rain. What began as widespread damage quickly became a human emergency, affecting both dense cities and quiet residential neighborhoods. Reaching victims was a challenge. First responders had to navigate blocked roads, unstable debris, and ongoing hazards, all while dangerous conditions persisted. Even after the strongest winds eased, downed trees and weakened buildings remained a serious threat, slowing rescue operations and putting responders at risk. Local and national officials issued urgent warnings, telling residents to stay indoors and avoid travel unless absolutely necessary. The message was clear. The danger wasn't always visible. Weakened trees, damaged structures, and loose debris could collapse without warning, especially as bursts of wind continued to sweep through the region. For many communities, the storm delivered a harsh lesson. Extreme weather doesn't need days to become deadly. It can turn lethal in minutes. As cleanup efforts began, authorities emphasized that protecting lives remained the top priority, reminding the public that the most dangerous phase can continue long after the storm appears to pass. And as Storm Kristin pushed deeper into central Portugal, critical systems began to fail. Powerful winds and falling trees damaged electrical lines and communication networks, triggering widespread outages. Thousands of homes lost electricity, and in some areas, mobile and internet service went down as well, leaving residents without reliable access to information during a rapidly unfolding emergency. The power outages quickly began to disrupt everyday life. Traffic lights went dark, card readers stopped working, public buildings were forced to reduce services or shut down entirely, especially those that support vulnerable groups, including seniors and people who rely on electrically powered medical equipment. These outages weren't just inconvenient, they were dangerous. Restoring power proved slow and extremely challenging. Utility crews struggled to reach damaged lines as roads remained blocked by debris and flooding. Strong wind gusts and unstable trees made repair work risky, forcing teams to stop again and again to avoid serious injury. Officials warned residents that electricity would not return quickly, especially in heavily affected areas like Leiria. People were urged to conserve batteries, stay away from downed power lines, and prepare for extended service interruptions. Even after the worst of the storm passed, damaged infrastructure continued to disrupt daily routines. As Storm Kristin lingered over central Portugal, emergency services were pushed to their limits. Civil protection teams, firefighters, police, and rescue units were overwhelmed with calls as storm-related incidents poured in from across the region. Reports ranged from fallen trees and blocked roads to flooded homes and residents trapped by collapsing debris. Response efforts continued around the clock. Crews worked through the night to clear streets, stabilize damaged buildings, and reopen critical access routes, often in dangerous conditions. In many locations, vehicles couldn't get through, forcing responders to continue on foot while navigating unstable terrain. The threat never fully disappeared. Falling trees and shifting debris remained a constant danger, slowing progress and increasing physical strain on crews. As hours turned into days, the pressure only grew. New emergencies emerged before earlier ones could be resolved, stretching personnel, equipment, and coordination to the breaking point. The storm wasn't just testing infrastructure, it was testing endurance. Officials acknowledged that emergency resources were under extreme strain and urged the public to call for help only in truly life-threatening situations. Even under constant pressure, response teams stayed fully deployed. Their mission never changed: protect lives, restore access, stabilize communities. As Storm Kristin continued to test Portugal's emergency systems, its impact spread far beyond wind damage and power outages. Days of heavy rainfall triggered widespread flooding across inland towns and cities, overwhelming drainage systems and pushing water into streets, basements, and low-lying homes. In some areas, fast-moving runoff rushed through narrow roads and neighborhoods, turning everyday travel into a serious safety risk and accelerating damage to property. At the same time, the coastline remained under relentless attack. The Atlantic continued to drive powerful waves toward shore, eroding beaches and weakening coastal ground. Protective barriers were undermined as sand and soil were stripped away, and in exposed areas, seawalls and coastal roads showed visible signs of stress after repeated impacts. Managing both threats at once proved difficult. Emergency agencies were forced to split crews and equipment between inland flood response and coastal stabilization. Teams working in flooded neighborhoods had to coordinate closely with crews monitoring shoreline damage, slowing progress as resources were stretched across multiple fronts. Officials warned that the danger wouldn't disappear when the rain stopped. Standing water could linger for days, increasing risks to health and infrastructure. And ongoing wave activity threatened to worsen coastal erosion long after the storm's peak. Together, inland flooding and coastal damage created a layered crisis, one that complicated response efforts and extended the road to recovery across affected regions. Extreme weather doesn't wait, and accurate information can make a real difference. This channel delivers clear, real-time reporting on major storms and natural disasters as they unfold around the world. We focus on confirmed conditions, explain what's changing, and break down why it matters. Clearly, responsibly, and without speculation. If this update helped you stay informed, consider liking the video to support the channel. Subscribe for continued coverage as severe weather evolves. And if friends or family are living in or traveling through affected areas, share this video. It could help them make safer decisions. We'll continue to update as conditions change. Stay aware, stay prepared, and stay safe.